Hello everyone, welcome back to another mini album reviews video. This is the 11th one in this series so far in 2026. And once again, they are very brief reviews. I've got 7 albums to talk about today, and I'm not going into a lot of depth on them. Like I've mentioned recently, I've been busy with school and work, and I'm expecting that maybe by April I might be able to upload more reviews in these videos and maybe make some of them a little bit more in depth, but I don't know, we'll have to wait and see. But I do want to keep the uploads coming. I do want to keep talking about and listening to new music. So, yeah, I'm going to just give my brief thoughts on these albums. It is all just my opinion at the end of the day. I might have some negative things to say. I definitely do. But it's just my opinion at the end of the day, so don't take it all too seriously. I'm just giving you my personal thoughts on these albums. Feel free to disagree with me on any of them. Alright, so now that that's all out of the way, let's get right into the reviews, starting with... I've quite liked a lot of what I've heard from Elucid, although I haven't really listened to much of Arm & Hammer's discography. But I also know Billy Woods is an artist who's hard to compare to anyone else as far as I'm aware, and thus I don't think this new album credited to Elucid and producer Sebb should really have my expectations affected by Arm & Hammer, even though Sebb did produce a track on We Buy Diabetic Test Strips, the one album of theirs I've listened to. I should probably revisit it too. It's been a while and I remember really liking that album. But I digress. As for my thoughts on I Guess You Had to Be There, well, on samples and production alone, I think this is really enjoyable, with the endless experimentation and the mix of weird grooviness with pure terror in its sound. And it's made perfectly for Elucid's rapping style, where it doesn't really feel like either outshines the other. They work in tandem. And forgive me for mentioning Billy Woods again, even though this isn't an Arm & Hammer album, because I'm pretty sure I remember at some point Elucid said something along the lines of, like Billy Woods' writing being more thought out and meaningful in each line, whereas Elucid's is more stream of consciousness. I could be wrong, but if I'm remembering correctly, Elucid said something along those lines. My apologies if I'm wrong about that, but I think I remember it. I don't know where it was or where to find it. But I have spent more time listening to Billy Woods' music than I have Elucid's, hence why he comes to mind so much when I'm listening to this. But Woods actually appears on this album with a guest verse which I'm pretty sure is drawing a parallel between colonialism and environmental ignorance, and it's a great feature on this album. Meanwhile, Elucid has said this album is partially about celebrating small victories, and honestly I'm having a hard time seeing that in the poetry here a lot of the time, where a lot of it is gloomy, especially when paired with such gloomy sounds. But I guess there do seem to be themes of the importance of self-love, and there definitely is a sense of hope in certain moments, despite how bleak so much of the world is, and I think he pulls this off quite well. I will also acknowledge that a lot of this does feel very stream of consciousness, but not without lots of fascinating bars along the way. And as I think of it right now, I mean, the title, I Guess You Had to Be There, I can't help but be reminded of that Departure album I reviewed earlier this year, where I'm sort of wondering if maybe some of it is just about personal experiences that nobody else can relate to. I don't know, it's hard to say. Now, I am very likely missing a lot with this project. There's probably a lot more meaning than I've been able to unpack, but I do know I enjoyed it a lot. I do think toward the end it sort of falls off a bit in terms of quality, mainly due to the production and instrumentals not being quite as strong, but it's a minor complaint for such a great album that is pretty consistently good all the way through. 8 out of 10 for me, and I'm curious to see if this grows on me throughout the year. Either way, I'm glad I gave it a shot, and I think you probably should too. Excellent stuff. heavensouls is a Nigerian producer and musician who's been getting quite a bit of critical acclaim for this new album, and there's an interesting story about the inspiration for this album that you can read on his Bandcamp page, about Nigeria, including mentioning the country being robbed of opportunities for its art to cross over to the West, and I'd recommend you read it. And I'm definitely glad I gave this a chance, because it feels quite different from most of the music I typically review. That's quite possibly intentional. And there's some impressive instrumentation on here and production that makes it all come together quite well, especially on a track like Straight Raw, with such an odd contrast of instrumental timbres that actually sounds surprisingly good when put all together. And yet I wish I could say I love this. Don't get me wrong, I did mostly enjoy this album, and it's mostly well produced and has a lot of unpredictability. And while I do wish I could find the lyrics somewhere online, I'm totally fine to just enjoy the way this sounds, and it's not really a big problem for me. So I'm not totally sure what I feel like is missing here. I guess I just feel like some moments are a little bit bland, and even the best moments are unlikely to have a lot of replay value for me. But that's likely just a me thing, and I'm definitely going to have to keep an eye out for new releases from Heavensouls, because this is really good, and I feel like there's potential for greatness. And I should also probably check out that Side Pieces album from early January. Apparently it's experimental hip-hop. But for Westside Trapped, I'm feeling a 7 out of 10. It's not totally my thing, but I can still acknowledge the quality here. I was really excited about this album once I got into Bruiser Wolf's albums very recently to prepare for this review, especially because his 2024 album, My Story Got Stories, was absolutely excellent. And while 2025's Potluck wasn't as good as its predecessor, it was still quite an enjoyable album, and he definitely has a very interesting sense of humor that I personally quite enjoy. And now he's teaming up with producer Sheefy McFly on this new half-hour-long album, and I can say it's pretty much what I expected, with the endless silly bars, really corny puns, and a delivery that actually makes it work, where even I'm not cringing at a line like, "We in sync like a faucet," because the delivery just fits. Maybe insert here some of the things I said in my recent Bill Callahan review about what feels like intentional awkwardness, albeit just in a very different kind of way on this album. And I think this album's well produced. There are some good guest features, and some tracks are really fun, like Shia Bill and Numbers, even if the latter does kind of feel like a lesser version of Too Bad from My Story Got Stories, probably my favorite song on that album. But some of the instrumentals feel a bit dull in the repetition, not every feature is spot on, and while Bruiser Wolf obviously has a lot of charming personality here, compared to his best, I don't think it's quite as strong here. So I'll give it a 7 out of 10. Still a very solid rap album that probably isn't too much of a stretch to call comedy rap, even if it's not fully just that. It's certainly fun and entertaining though, just maybe not as memorable as I would have liked. WILLOW is honestly one of those artists I often forget exists. And it's kind of surprising because I have liked a lot of the music I've heard from her, and I loved her song Symptom of Life from 2 years ago. But I don't know, I just don't really think about her music that often. But anyway, we got a new album from her, and it's pretty short, and well, it certainly feels like it's being presented as this wild, extravagant, grandiose experiment, and unfortunately it doesn't feel that interesting. There are some good vocal melodies here and there, and WILLOW is a good singer, but there's not much about this that makes it particularly memorable, and I don't think there's a standout highlight like Symptom of Life, and the production doesn't have the flashiness nor the impact to really make an album like this work, or even come particularly close. And considering how a lot of these tracks just feel more like fragments than fully fleshed out songs, it unsurprisingly runs into problems. I do like some moments like Not a Fantasy and its unique way of advocating for self-love, the admittedly catchy Vegetation, and the bass line paired with the vocal layering of Holy Mystery. And you know what, I'll even give the closing track some credit for at least being interesting in the Beatlesque style. But I don't see what makes this special, so while I think it's decent and a 6 out of 10, I don't think you're missing much if you skip over this. For this kind of thoughtful, plainly delivered, borderline psychedelic folk rock, I'd say just listen to Wolf Alice instead. That'll be my advice. So I ran out of time to go through all of James Blake's albums, but I did revisit his 2023 album Playing Robots into Heaven, which I remember really liking at the time, and I still think it has some incredibly haunting moments. Some part of me didn't know I needed Tell Me and Fall Back at that point in 2023. But as a whole, it isn't quite great if you ask me, but it was still very good, and I was excited to hear this new one. And I unfortunately don't think it quite lives up to my expectations. I listened to this, I think 5 times all the way through, and I'm still struggling to really find what this might bring to the table, aside from some decent production and some nice subtle details in certain moments, like a few different aspects of the build on I Had a Dream She Took My Hand, the background synths of Days Go By, or some other small production details across this album. I also do quite like Dave's feature on Doesn't Just Happen. But then all over this album you get a bunch of dull keyboards, weird vocal effects that usually don't really work, and a falsetto from James Blake that I also don't find particularly enjoyable, especially when it sounds like he's really struggling vocally on Make Something Up. And a lot of this album just feels very cliche lyrically, or maybe not even as much cliche as it just kind of feels underwritten. James Blake has said that the phrase to describe this album is love in a time of chaos. And yeah, it very much seems apparent in a lot of the lyrics, but I don't know, it just doesn't feel particularly comforting, and while it isn't the opposite either, it doesn't make this great. Because unfortunately I don't think it's anywhere close. Light 6 out of 10, and I unfortunately think this is a significant step down from his 2023 album. Okay, so here's a new Jack Harlow album, and honestly, I haven't listened to this guy's music in so long, I barely even remember why I found it so dull and boring and sometimes outright bad. I guess it's just that forgettable. And I'm gonna make this one very brief as well, or at least I was going to. It's still pretty brief. Partially because of my time crunch, but also partially because I just don't really care to discuss a new album from this guy. But curiosity got the best of me, and whoa, this is a turn I wasn't expecting, because this isn't even a rap album, moving more in a pop R&B soul direction. And unfortunately, it absolutely sucks. Way more than even I would have imagined. Firstly, this is some of the blandest, most tediously boring and lifeless music I have heard in a long time, where the instrumentals do absolutely nothing to make up for Jack Harlow's incredibly basic vocal delivery that brings absolutely no feeling to any of these songs. Well, other than feelings of misery from listening to it. And the lyrics make this so much worse, where the endless gaslighting tactics and playing the role of the nice guy while the messages are so clearly manipulative is just gross. Where from everything he says on this album, it seems like the people he's singing about are not into it at all, and yet he's just gonna keep waiting until they're ready to fuck him. Because, oh, he's so respectful. And it seems like he thinks he knows what they want more than they do. All of this is enough for me to tear this to shreds, and a better delivery with more lively musical execution would not have saved this from its disgusting writing, but it would have made this at least slightly more tolerable to sit through. It's 9 tracks in under a half hour, and yet it feels twice as long, full of endless garbage songs that I think we'd all be better off without. In other words, this is absolute dog shit, and a 2 out of 10, the lowest score I've given any album thus far in 2026. I literally felt angry as I sat through this. So please, avoid this like the plague, for your own good. Alright, we're ending this video with another very brief review, and I reviewed Bill Orcutt's Jump On It in 2023 on my blog, and I didn't really care for it, which unfortunately still stands as I revisited it recently. And aside from that, I've honestly barely even thought about this composer slash guitarist, despite his huge discography and him releasing at least an album every year for the past decade. And just for the record, an album like this doesn't have that high a ceiling for me. Just instrumental songs and electric guitar that feel more like demos than actual songs themselves, and thus it's hard for me to properly praise this without that asterisk. But hey, the guitar timbre is really nice, and a lot of these riffs could have some serious potential if you add a full band around them, and it just makes me wish these tracks had been used in a different context. I love the blazing riffs of Because Sharp Also Smooth. Unexpectedly Heavy feels like it could have been an early Interpol song, and the watery timbre is oddly fitting on Is Left Alone. But let me be blunt, there is basically no reason for me to go back to this on my own time when I could listen to a great rock album instead. So while I'm giving this a light 7 out of 10 for being pretty good in terms of riffs and guitar timbre, that's all this album is, and I wish there was more. Alright, thank you so much for watching. Feel free to let me know in the comment section down below what you thought of these albums and or what you thought of my video. Yes, I know I was negative at some parts of this video, especially one specific album, but it's just my opinion at the end of the day. Feel free to let me know what you think in the comment section down below, and you can let me know what you think of my video too. You don't have to like my video, just like I don't have to like the albums, although I did like some of the albums in this video. You know what's interesting? If I counted correctly, which I'm almost positive I did, this video now marks 100 albums reviewed on this channel in 2026. I'm pretty sure I reviewed just over 100, like I think 109 last year for all of 2025. So yeah, right now, like, I'm at 100 reviews already, and we're not even a quarter of the way through the year. That's not me saying that I'm going to hit 400 reviews. I really don't think that's going to happen. But, you know, it might. I don't know. I'm not going to give up on that. My goal going into the year was 350. I think it's doable. But I think, again, with that comes making a lot of shorter reviews where I don't go into that much detail. And you know what? I'm okay with that. I make the content that I want to make. Some people might like it. Some people might not. But yeah, at the end of the day, this is just my opinions on these albums, my brief thoughts on them. And I will just say, I am planning to possibly upload another video today. Possibly. I don't know. I'm not sure if that's going to happen. I don't want to get my hopes up too much. But we'll see. I also don't know when this is going to be published. I think it's going to be published the day I'm filming it, but I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But anyway, Thank you for watching. I will see you all later, hopefully soon. Again, possibly another video coming today, but I will stop going on and on and on talking. So, yeah. Alright, I'll just say bye now.